Ladies and gentlemen, sit back and enjoy
Mega Meeple!
Greetings and welcome to the Mega Meeple, the show all about gamers and the games that bring them together. This is episode 74, and welcome. If you are new to listenership, welcome, and just pull up a chair. Everybody is welcome here at the Mega Meeple Gaming Studio. We're all about inclusiveness here. Doesn't matter who you are or what you are. You're always welcome. Well, let me qualify that. If you're an a-hole, then no, you're not welcome here. Don't misinterpret our inclusiveness to blind tolerance to toxic behaviors and attitudes. So yeah, if you're cool, then you're definitely welcome here. So pull up a chair, grab a Mountain Dew, and let's get the game in here. So yeah, thank you so much for listening. If you haven't already, you could check out my website. That's www.themegameeple.com. And all of our episodes stream there, even before it gets into iTunes. And you could always go back to the archives and listen to the past year and a half if you want to, binge listen. Certainly welcome to do that. You want to follow me on any of the social media craps, just go to the social media page on the website. All the links are there. And yeah, if you just like and follow and interact and stuff like that with Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, any of those things, that really helps out. We also have a Pod Pledge and Patreon page if you want to go to either one of those and support the show, both the podcast and the YouTube channel. Something as small as $1 a month. Hell, that enough people do that. That takes care of quite a few things. And if you're not able to do that, there's other ways you could support the show. It won't cost you a dime. As I already said, you could like and interact and follow me on the social media stuff, but also just spreading the word. Tell all your friends about the Mega Meeple. If you haven't already, you go to iTunes and subscribe. And while you're there, put out some of that 5-star loving. Leave me a happy review. That really helps out a lot. There's just a lot of different ways that you could support the show. Well, let's see here. This past weekend, in fact, at the time of recording this, the Extra Life gaming events are going on, and it's pretty wild. If your local gaming community is anything like it is here in Charlotte, we typically have the gaming events on. I don't know. It's usually the weekend that the whole set your clocks back takes place. So they say it's a 24-hour gaming event. Yeah, it may be 24 hours based on the clock, but your body is going through 25 hours. Which, I mean, hey, as a gamer, I could see where that extra hour, you could always use that extra hour to, game more, get an extra hour of gaming. Or if you're one of these people that are doing the marathon, you could use that extra hour to take a little power nap in the corner of the game store. So, and help get that second wind as you game through the second half of the gaming event. Now, this upcoming weekend, I am going to be at the Mace Gaming Con here in Charlotte, and I'm going to be GMing about half a dozen or so games during a 3-day event. I think I'm signed up to play at least 2 RPGs, and then intermixed in between all those things, I will be walking around interviewing and talking with some of the vendors and some of the local game designers. So I'll be looking forward to some of the interviews, live interviews live in the sense that they were recorded at the con. I'll probably be on the next episode or the episode after. Just talking to some of the game designers here. Because if you've listened, obviously I've interviewed some of the big powerhouses and the big names, but I like to give time to the sort of like the small mom and pop and the one man operation type of things of individual game designers. Now I do want to give some time with the whole Extra Life game events. I mean, it's all fine and good that these things are going on or have gone on this past weekend, and basically all depending on what your local gaming community, what day or what weekends they're having that. But I want to bring your attention that just because it's like one weekend doesn't mean that this is the only time that you're able to donate to the Extra Life or your local area Children's Miracle Network of hospitals. I mean, it's sort of like the whole holiday season, obnoxious damn bell ringer that's outside of Harris Teeter or your local grocery store around, but the whole month between Thanksgiving and Christmas, they're out there with their bell ringing and crap. And it seems like that's the only time of the year you ever see those people. Well, case in point, just because the whole Extra Life gaming day what was this past weekend, that doesn't mean that, obviously, that doesn't mean that that's the only time that they have a need for donations and support. So I want to bring to your attention that, yeah, it's centered around and focused around the whole game day and the gaming marathons and raising money for your local hospitals. But you could donate to Extra Life and your local children's hospital network all year long. And in fact, I'll leave a link in the show notes of this episode where you could go and find out more about Extra Life. So, hey, just if you're not able to participate or donate during the event, yeah, you could do that all year long. Just because the event is over doesn't mean the need is over. So I want to bring your attention to that. Just keep that in mind. Well, this is kind of as Kickstarter as sometimes happens, and a lot of times the designers decide to cancel their campaign. In fact, Raven's Tales chose to cancel their Warden's campaign on Kickstarter. I had them. I had Kate on I think about 2 or 3 episodes ago. But yeah, they'll be back. She'll be back. The game is just going to be going through a revamping type of thing, and they will return to Kickstarter soon. So that interview from that episode, is still relevant. I know last week I mentioned that this week's guest was going to be John Maiden, talking about a game called Penjango. Well, about a day or two after I recorded that segment and edited it and was getting it up on the for our Patreon and Podpledge supporters, which that's one of the perks for supporters is they get the unedited, sort of like the director's extended cut of the episodes a good 2 or 3 days prior to everybody else, and then about Sunday or so, Sunday night, the episodes stream on the website, and then by Monday it goes up in iTunes and all the other podcast streaming services. But about a day or so after I recorded and edited last week's episode, the Penjango Kickstarter got canceled, or they canceled it. So Yeah, I didn't I didn't see the point of following through with that for this episode. Just for you to for all you listeners to go to that Kickstarter just to see that it's canceled. So I'm going to put that interview and episode on the back burner. So once Peng Django gets back on Kickstarter, and they do whatever they need to do to, for whatever reasons that they cancel the campaign and put that back on Kickstarter. Once that happens, I will take that interview and that episode and put it out there. So as a result, next week's guest got bumped up a week. So this week's guest is Gabe Barrett, and he's going to be talking about the Final Flicktier. And as far as I know, at the time that I'm recording this section of the episode, I checked it as of right now, the Kickstarter's still there. It hasn't been canceled yet. So got your fingers crossed. Hopefully that will continue on after this episode goes out. We'll see. But anyway, here is the interview with Gabe Barrett talking about the Final Flicktier. Welcome back to the Mega Meeple. And one of the cool things I enjoy doing, it's always great to talk to the household names, as it were, of game design. The Jamie Stegmeyers, the John DeClairs, and stuff like that. But I like talking to these one man operations. These kind of more the grassroots type of thing, the mom and pop designers. And we got this week we have Gabe Barrett. Gabe, how you doing?
Man, I'm doing really well. Really glad to be on your show.
Oh, thank you for coming on. Very appreciate your time. Now you have a game coming in the pipeline here on the horizon called the Final Flicktier. Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah, the Final Flicktier, a little bit of a play on words. And, it's one thing I've had a couple people ask me about. It's like, why did you choose that title? Was one, it tells you immediately what it is. It's space and it's flicking. It's dexterity. So, okay. Yeah, that's the title I went with. Some people said I should have made it more kind of grandiose or vague. And I was like, no, I'm going to tell people right off the get-go what it is.
Definitely. He's like, hey, when they talk about location, part of that, too, is... name. If you can't tell people what it's about or what it's like, it's going to be all that more difficult to market it and get people interested in it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I could have found like some very generic, spacey, word or a couple words or something like that. But I was like, I just want people to know as soon as they pick up the box, they see the front cover, is this game for me or not? And so if they like flicking games, they like dexterity, as soon as you see the cover, you're like, okay, this might be a game for me. If you hate dexterity, it's like, okay, let me just walk on by. And so I don't have to waste people's time. And maybe people who like dexterity will be a little more attracted to it.
That finger dexterity flicking thing where you're flicking tokens and shooting people. Is this similar to that same dynamic here?
Yeah, very similar. And so, but instead of tokens, it's dice. And so your spaceships are dice. So some factions have D6s, you got D8s, you got D12s, and that determines kind of the power of your ship. So the bigger the die, the more awesome, the more powerful the ship is. And you flick it around on these neoprene mats that make up the galaxy, and you're flicking your ships trying to land on these different planets to be able to build stuff and exploit and take resources and attack other ships. And so it's a dice flicking game.
Oh, okay. Well, that's something unique. Taking a similar mechanic and just put a little twist on it. And that's pretty. That's one way of making your mark out there and being unique and just being. Tell us more about yourself and how did the gaming bug bite you, and what kind of games have you really been drawn to?
Yeah, for sure. So people might have heard of me just maybe through my podcast. I run a design-based podcast called the Board Game Design Lab, where somebody at your show, I get to interview just some of the best people in the industry, talking about Jamie Stegmaier, some of these awesome other designers out there, and just get to talk about specific topics in game design. And so that's actually kind of how I got more into the industry, but I got into the hobby just by making games, and especially early on, just making really crappy, terrible games. This is probably, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. I'd just gotten into playing games, playing into D&D and Catan and some of these other, kind of entry-level games. It brings a lot of people in, Magic the Gathering, things like that. And I started thinking, I wonder if I could do this myself. And so I started making my own games without much knowledge of the industry, just kind of the entry level, family gateway style games, and started making my own games. And none of them were very good. And but luckily I had some friends that would play with me every now and then, and kind of growing and learning and all that kind of thing. And I was living in Honduras right after I graduated. I was graduated college, moved to Atlanta for a while, and then moved down to Honduras. I'm a teacher down here. I teach English at a high school. And I really wanted to be more part of the industry, and I didn't know how to do it because it's really hard to get games down here. It's really hard to ship things to Honduras. And so I thought, well, what can I do? And I thought, what if I started a podcast? And that's kind of how things evolved. And so I started learning and making more games, and finally they started to get good. They started to be enjoyed by other people, and started to get more and more down that path. And I've got several games that are, either with publishers, kind of in the pitching stage, and waiting for them to give me some feedback, things like that. And then I've got one coming to Kickstarter here at the end of October 29th. And so just excited about lots of different things. Oh, also have a game that just got signed by Button Shy. And so that comes out later, I guess spring of next year. So, things are moving along.
Oh, wow. Okay, great. So now it's the Final Flicktier is coming to the Kickstarter. So how long is it going to be? How long is the campaign going to be for?
Yeah, it's basically the month of November. So it's the very end of October to the very end of November. I was going to end it. I was going to do a 3-week campaign, and then I realized that third week would put me ending it during Thanksgiving. I was like, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. So I decided to go an extra week, and so it'll be 4 weeks, basically the whole month of November.
Okay. All right. Sweet. So yeah, looking forward to that. And I think actually this episode will be dropping about the time that the Kickstarter will be going live. So it should be on there. So if go to Kickstarter and check that out. So tell us about how the game was created, and one of the things I always enjoy hearing is what was the original intent or the concept of the game versus what it actually ended up being, and how close were those two from being resemblance of each other?
Yeah, for sure. So way back, I guess this was towards the beginning of the year, beginning of 2018, I was interviewing a designer for my own podcast, and he had a really cool dexterity game called Dino Dunk, and it's basketball playing dinosaurs. And so you're flicking tokens around, trying to flick the basketball into the volcano to score the goal. And it was a really cool episode. And I remember, I was writing notes and different things and asking questions and kind of follow up and stuff like that to the designer. And I remember just having this random idea, and I thought, what if I made a 4X dexterity game? Like, is that possible? Can you make a 4X dexterity game? And so I just wrote it down in my notes, and I underlined it. And then I kept going on with the conversation, and it just kind of stuck in the back of my head, this 4X dexterity. Can you have a deep, lots of different things going on where you're exploring, exploiting, exterminating, all these different things, but also using dexterity as the main core mechanic. And so that idea just kind of jumped around in my brain for a while, and I wrote some notes here and there. And then probably, I don't know, this is back right before the summer, I started actually working on it, trying to put together a prototype. And it was originally a token-based game. So you're flicking wooden discs around, and the planets were these bigger wooden discs, and you had to flick and kind of basically run into the planet, and then you'd be on it, and had asteroids and different things. And so the table was actually the board. So it didn't have a board. The table made up the galaxy. And so you could kind of make the galaxy as big or as small as your table. And that was kind of a cool concept. Then I tried different things. I 3D printed these little spaceships I found online, and put those, hot glued those onto tokens, and those are your ships. And it was an interesting thing, but it just wasn't very fun. I don't know. It just wasn't enjoyable. It felt like it was just kind of flicking it felt like work. And so I kind of put it on the shelf for a few weeks and just kind of pondered and thought about it. And then I had this idea of like, what if I got rid of the tokens? Like, what if I did something different? Everybody uses tokens. What if I did something different? What if I use dice? And so I was like, oh, okay, that'd be cool. Because then you could have different factions, and the dice could be different sizes, and different sizes are more powerful or less powerful, or do different things. A D4 versus a D12. That kind of stuff. And so I started using dice, and then I got rid of the big thick wooden planets and use cards instead. So you'd have to flick the die and have to land on the card. And that worked okay, but I ran into some issues with that. But the cards would slide around the board, so the galaxy would change. The planet, I guess, would revolve a little bit as you played the game. And so I thought, well, what if I use neoprene mats? All right, and so that was really the game changer, so to speak. And that really kind of put things where they needed to be as far as traveling down where the game is now. But yeah, so from concept of 4x dexterity to where it is now, it's very similar. I set out to make about a 75-minute game, and now it's at 60 minutes. And that's what's really great. You can have that 4x experience, and you can do all the 4x stuff, and you can do it in an hour, right? And that's at 4 players. That's a max player count in an hour. I'm not just fudging the numbers. Every playtest I've done the last several weeks has been exactly 60 minutes. And so it's been really cool getting the playtime down. And it's also a good like family style game. So this is kind of like a family 4X. And you're probably not going to play Eclipse or Twilight Imperium with your 10-year-old, but you could definitely play this game with your 10-year-old. Or you could play it with your kind of hardcore gamer group, where people get a little more into the dexterity and have a little more attention there. And so anyway, from where it started, it hasn't traveled that much differently than what I hoped to create. And so it's been a lot of fun to play test and develop and make the factions different and create different structures and different, have different abilities and upgrades and stuff like that. And yeah, it's been a really great process.
Okay, cool. So it's 2 4 players, 4x. And now, can you tell us a little bit about each of the factions?
Yeah, so there's 4 base factions, and hopefully a couple more through stretch goals if the Kickstarter goes well. But there's 4 base ones. You have the Earthlings, right? You have the United Earth Alliance, and they're all about traveling and exploration. So they want to build colonies all over the galaxy, and they've got these really cool thing called warp gates, which allow you to basically do free action movement from any planet with a warp gate to another planet with a warp gate. And this is also a really good faction if you have somebody in your group that doesn't like dexterity, or if you've got a young kid that's not great at flicking, maybe their motor skills are still developing. This is a good faction for them because they don't have to do as much flicking, and they've got different ways to mitigate the flicking. And so they're a really good faction for moving around the board and building stuff. And then you've got the Koravali Trade Federation. These guys are really good at missions. So the game you can score a lot of points through like deliver missions, pick up and deliver kind of things, or there's different objectives that come out throughout the game. And so these guys are really good at delivering stuff. They're trying to expand their monopoly from their home planet throughout the rest of the galaxy. They own everything on Koravale, their planet, and they want to take over everybody else's economy. And then you have the Noxian Empire, and they're like the Klingons. They're the warrior race. And so they have recently lost their home planet. Their home planet is like in the middle of like being broken apart after this really bitter war that they went through. And so they're trying to find a new home planet. And they're trying to blow everybody else up in the process. They want other people to feel the loss that they've felt. And so a lot of their upgrades are combat-based and give them bonuses for combat. They've got like a big D12, this giant dreadnought kind of ship that goes around the board, and it's really good at blowing other people up. And they're really good at kind of keeping the other players in check. So if you have one faction that seems to be building a lot and is kind of getting out in front, they can go over there and blow up their ships and make them waste turns having to do more movement actions later on. And then the last core faction is called the Surge, and they're kind of like the Flood from Halo, where they just want to take over everybody. They want to take over your brain. They want to spread throughout the galaxy and kind of place all their hatcheries all over the place, and they get points for doing that. And they've got a really cool mechanism that's this like parasite, this bug, that you flick this disc, this token, and if it hits an enemy ship, that ship becomes yours. And so you only get one of these. But let's say that Noxian players running around with their D12 just blowing everybody else up. Well, the Surge player can hit that D12 with their token, and that becomes theirs for a while. And so they can take over other people's ships, which is good because their base dice are D4. So they have these little rinky-dink dice that aren't very good at combat. But then they can take your big dreadnought if they want to, or if they're dexterous enough. And so each faction's a little bit different, has a little bit different strategy, different style of play. But at the same time, the overall game is very similar. So it's not like Root or anything like that, or Vast, where every faction is so asymmetrical you're playing a different game. Everybody's playing the same game, same actions, same opportunities, same ways to score points. Just each faction's a little bit different style to it. And so it's been really fun. And I've got a couple expansion factions as well that do things even more differently. So okay. We'll see what happens.
All right, excellent. Yeah, I've always kind of been intrigued by the asymmetry of certain games, but now when we're talking about flicking dice, one thing I'm kind of curious about. when you flick the dice, is it? I mean, we're talking like a regular type of die with the pips and stuff on it. So
normal 16 millimeter size.
Okay, so if the die lands, you have like a D6, and the 3 is basically in a sense ruled, so to speak. Is there a particular effect or something that occurs based on how many pips are showing when you flick the die?
Yeah, so whatever number is up, right? So like you said, you have a 3 that's up, then that is your current combat value. And so if you're in combat or somebody wants to attack you and I flick and I hit your die, and I can explain the combat in a minute because it's got a really cool mechanism with the way that works. And I have a 6 and you have a 3, I'm currently winning. And you can also play a card that gives you a combat bonus, and so maybe I play a 2 and you play a 4, and then you add everything up and whoever has the highest combat value wins. So it's kind of a strategic thing or a tactical thing where if your 6 is up, right, and you're trying to flick against somebody who has a 1, then you want to flick it in such a way that you don't turn over your 6, and so it becomes more of a finesse thing than a brute strength. It's not about flicking the crap out of stuff. It's about hitting things just right, so you get the values that you want. And so the number plays into the actual game. It's not just a die. The number that's up actually means something.
Okay, yeah, that's a unique, cool mechanic to that. So.
Yeah, but going back to the flicking, so one thing I've run into with a lot of dexterity games, and if you've played many, you've probably run into this too, where people flick so hard that the tokens just fly all over the place, and they run into each other, and it bounces everything around, or the tokens fly off and under the couch or under the fridge or into the litter box and things like that. And so one of the challenges was that.
God forbid if you have a cat, you'll never see it again.
Yeah. And so one of the design challenges that I ran into was, well, how do I make that not happen, right? How do I incentivize people not flicking the mess out of stuff? And so I created the hyperspace token, basically, and it's this 3.5 by 1 inch token that goes behind whatever die you're trying to attack. And basically, if you flick your die so hard that it hits that other die and it goes beyond that hyperspace token, then the battle doesn't happen. The combat doesn't happen. What effectively happened is you came in too hot and they saw you coming and they took off. They jumped to hyperspace and they get to pick up their die and put it anywhere on the board that they want for free. So not only do you not get to blow them up, you also just gave them an advantage because now they can move anywhere to kind of set themselves up for their next turn. And so it's been really cool to kind of see players, if you're trying to attack from a long distance, try to hit it just right, just enough where you don't hit it too hard. And it's really helped because I don't have dice flying all over the place or flying off the table. So it's been good.
Ah, okay. So that's a pretty neat mechanic there, and sort of like a little incentive to not flick the hell out of everything.
Absolutely.
Judging if the Kickstarter does well, I mean, for people who may be listening to this maybe months or even a year or so down the line, if the Kickstarter goes well and people miss the Kickstarter, will there be do you know if there'll be a way that people could pre-order or possibly order it from your website?
Yeah, for sure. So if this is after the campaign and you go to the Kickstarter page, there should be a way to pre-order it there, and then it'll also hopefully hit stores in July of 2019. And so if this is after July of 2019, check coolstuffinc.com or some of your other favorite online retailers, and you hopefully be able to find it there. Or maybe it's sold out. Maybe I've got a good problem to have, or my game's sold out and it's going to go to Kickstarter again or have another print run or something like that.
Okay. All right, Gabe. Well, thank you so much. Now, if people want to find out more about the Kickstarter or Barrett Publishing, or even you as a game designer, where could they go? Or your podcast?
So I run everything through the podcast website, and that's just boardgamedesignlab.com. You can check out the Facebook community, which is awesome. There's over 2,000 game designers on there. So if you're a game designer listening to this, you want to get involved with some other awesome, amazing, creative people, want to help your games come to life and become real things, check out the Facebook community, which is just Board Game Design Lab community. That's very simple. But that's where you can find all the stuff going on with both my games and also the podcast and all these kinds of things.
Excellent. And then obviously we'll, as usual, we will have links to those things on the show notes of this episode. Okay, thank you so much. Well, but before you go, we like to play a little game with all of our guests. Call it the Mega Meeple Rapid Fire Round. And you up for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. So let's see here. We got wine or beer.
Oh, I'm a beer guy. I'm a PBR guy. Like cheap beer, I'm a huge fan of.
All righty. City or country?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm gonna go country. I'm gonna go country, but still close enough to the city where I can like do some cool stuff. But I like being out and hearing the crickets and living. I love living on the lake, or I'd love to live on the lake. And so I'd go country.
Okay. Star Trek Classic or Star Trek Next Generation?
Ooh, that's a good question. I'm going to say Next Generation just because that's the main thing I remember. I haven't watched too much Star Trek Classic. I've seen some of the movies, but not much of the show. So I'm going to go Next Generation just because it's more of what I've been exposed to.
Okay. Board games or video games?
Oh, board games by far. I think video games are great, but just something about board games I just enjoy more. Being with my friends and around the same table and being able to eat chips and play, I think it's just a better way to go.
Rock or jazz?
Rock or jazz? At first, I thought you were going to ask me like a professional wrestling question, which I was going to say the Rock for sure.
Oh, okay.
But I'm going to go rock.
Okay. Well, you gave me an idea for the last one.
All right.
Let me see here. Okay. Triple H or Stone Cold Steve Austin?
Oh man, that's a good question. I'm going to go Stone Cold. But again, The Rock, the People's Champ, he's my favorite of all time. Right now, I'm a fan of Finn Balor, even though they're not using him worth a dang in the WWE, so I'm not watching right now. But The Rock's my favorite. But Stone Cold, I mean, he's as good as it gets as far as old school guys. And fun fact, I even pondered being a professional wrestler for a while. Like I trained and I did a little work, and I was really thinking, man, maybe this is where I want to take my life. But it didn't work out so well, and so I ended up not traveling down that road. But it was a fun little experience nonetheless.
Oh, wow. I remember when they had that, what was it called? I think it was called Tough Enough or something like that.
Yeah, Tough Enough, that reality show.
Yeah.
Yeah, my body just didn't hold up. I'm not a real big guy already, and so people talk about being fake. It's not fake. It's staged and it's choreographed. But good Lord, does it hurt? I played college football, and I got plenty of aches and pains and hurts from that. But nothing was more painful than my stint of training in professional wrestling. The whole thing was. It's like the deepest pain you can imagine. So my body probably thanks me for not traveling down that road.
I can't imagine those guys and girls doing that almost every night, and then plus all the
it's phenomenal.
All the traveling they have to do in between cities. Yep. Oh, yep. I mean, just traveling alone takes a lot out of me. I can't think of having to do that physical work, all that.
No doubt.
All right, Gabe. Well, talking about game and wrestling. So
doesn't get any better than that, does it?
Really. So, well, thank you so much, Gabe. And again, the Final Flicktier. Go check it out on Kickstarter.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
All righty then. Well, thank you so much for smashing that download button and listening to this week's episode. You want to come back next week as my guest will be talking about a game that I actually showcased this week on the Dice Towers board game breakfast segment that I did. And it's a game called How Do You See the World? So you want to come back and listen to that. That game is actually available on Amazon. But come back next week and you'll be able to hear the interview with the designer and creator of that game. So again, go visit me at the website, www.megameeple.com. Rate and comment and review us on the iTunes. As much as I appreciate your listenership. So thank you so much for listening. So I will talk to you next week. But until then, this is Tom saying we'll see you at the gaming table and the voting booth. Go vote!